research is telling us something very interesting and quite compelling about the nature of the cost base and its share compared to labour. We're agreed that the external forces that are driving business are a massive force for change. People have got to embrace and accept that and look for greater flexibility and a holistic view of their business as far as the supply chain is concerned, how they manage their suppliers are concerned, how the suppliers serve the business and serve its ability to manage risk. And obviously there are benefits there for the finance function in particular for increased transparency. But I want to leave we're coming into the closing stage now, so I want to leave the listeners with some advice, maybe some things that they can do when they get off this call to think about perhaps what the implications are for their own businesses. Jamie, what are your tips for people in this context? What's your takeaway?
Well, I think for me here, there's a real story of, there's a big opportunity. I don't think it's been realised as much as it could be in terms of cost, first of all, but also taking a slightly different, a more strategic approach, a more sort of cross-functional, cross-working approach to some of these issues. I think it's a challenge, and I certainly think it takes a much more long-term view. And I think from a finance perspective, I think there are a few issues for me. So first of all, it's just starting to get some visibility across that cost base, and even just starting to sort of just ask yourself the question: well, what does the sort of cost in my organisation look like to my labour costs and my non-labour costs? Because obviously, the research is telling us that perhaps people haven't got such a great sort of control or understanding of that as
almost to quantify the opportunity for them, the profit opportunity for them.
Absolutely. So let's start to quantify, what the opportunity is. And then for me, I think it's about thinking, and again, from a finance perspective, it's about thinking about whether or not I've got the right finance construct and the right people in my organisation that can work cross-functionally, across the business, that can drive and develop successful relationships, that can bring specialised finance knowledge to the benefit of areas like procurement to effectively work, across the supply base to drive some of those costs. So I think there's a number of things that people can start thinking about from a finance perspective to start to iron out some of these issues.
And stick it on the agenda of your next finance function meeting and your board meeting.
It's about, at the end of the day, it's about, from a finance perspective, it's about our reputation, it's about our influence in the organisation. And, I said at the start, the big challenge, the big mandate for finance is about how do we help the organisation drive value in a complex, competitive, challenging environment. This research suggests there's a big opportunity here, but it's really about stepping up to the plate.
And Guy, I mean, you, as you said, you've been working with companies for 20 years, delivering innovative approaches to their procurement issues, their supply issues. What do you think this tells us? What should we take away from this for the year ahead?
Richard, ultimately, every business is different. You've got to take account of that. But I think that the starting point is there are some questions that you can ask of yourself and of your business. I'll give you some examples which might help you ultimately construct a better story for mobilizing suppliers or procurement within your business. So the first, I think, is what does the business think is the role of suppliers? I think the second that linked to that is what does the business think is the role of procurement? And that then, in exploring those issues and thinking about those issues, if you come back with an answer saying we think suppliers are there to be squeezed and we think procurement is there to squeeze them stroke generate savings, you know immediately that there is a gap between what the business is asking of from the suppliers and procurement and what could be done. And that is potentially quite a profound gap. And once you've established that there's a gap, then you've got an opportunity to start to think about what do we need to do to start to close that gap. Because ultimately what you've got to do is come up with a new narrative for the role of suppliers and the role of procurement in your own business. And if it was me, I would start initially with getting command and control over data. Okay? But I would also start to think about these questions around what is the nature of the service that we want procurement to provide in the business and how we're going to manage our supplies beyond savings. There's a whole sequence of subsidiary questions that one can compose. But ultimately, I think there's one other thing which is worthwhile reflecting, which is given the importance of procurement and suppliers to your business, does procurement have the right level of voice in your organization, given that importance? And I think reflecting on the answers to all of these questions, whether it's in the affirmative or negative, start to help you identify in your own head whether what you've got today and where you're positioned today is right in order to achieve the full potential of what the supplier can do for your business. Because you have to start to assume, because we're in a process of change, that there are some businesses, some competitors of yours, whether it is in the UK, Europe, US, the globe, who have started to think about this, who are exploring these types of issues and have started to think about how much more powerful we would be as a business if we fully mobilize these suppliers to help drive us forward.
Yeah.
And that has a profound impact on, I think, your business.
Yeah. I'm very struck through the course of this discussion how companies have tended to be quite good at reflecting changes in their markets and their customer base. They've looked at the internet, they've looked at globalization, they've taken a very creative approach to customers. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like what you guys are saying is the same needs to happen on the other end of the equation. You've got to take that open-minded, creative view of your suppliers and your supply base and what it can do for you, as you have done so creatively with your customer base.
I think you've had, over the last 40 years, we've seen revolutions in the way that marketing is done, we've seen revolutions in the way that IT operates, I think we've seen revolutions in the way that human resources and people development is occurring. I think we are still in the process of there being a revolution in procurement and with the nature of the use of suppliers, and different organizations are making different levels of progress on this area, but I still think, I sense there's a lot more that we can do. So if everybody on this call is a revolutionary, then I think all I can tell you is I think there's a long way for us to go before the full fruits of our revolution is going to come to fruition.
A call to man the barricade seems like a very opportune moment on which to draw proceedings to a close. Guy, thank you very much. Jamie, thank you for your contributions. Just a quick reminder to everyone listening that you can find out much more by visiting the website at proximagroup.com. I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks very much, everyone.